Good afternoon, evening, good morning, wherever everybody is. Welcome. Hopefully, we're going to have some fun today. I've got a couple of guys, several guys with us today. We're going to be doing some Thargoid combat, and we've got joining me Commander Gluttony Fang. Say hi, Gluttony. And if Chad, if you guys could confirm for me that you guys can hear, that'd be great.
Hello, glad to be here.
Great. And we've got, let's see, we've got Gluttony, we've got 100.rub. Say hi, 100. Rub.
Yeah, greetings everybody.
And M Graham. Let's check. Say hi, M Graham.
Hello, hello.
And Malingo. Maligno. Am I saying? Did I get
Mal-
it right that time?
Maligno, yeah. Just think of the word malignant. I'm
Yeah.
very
Okay. There
happy
you
to
go.
be
There you
here.
go. Maligno. And so yeah. So welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me, especially such kind of with late notice because Gluttony and I put this together. What basically yesterday. Um,
Yes.
Yeah, right. And Metal Gear, thanks so much for the donation, buddy. I really appreciate it. If you guys have questions, let's see, we can hear you both. Okay, great, great. If there's any audio problems or anything during, you guys just shout out and let me know if you're having trouble hearing anybody or anything like that. Forgive my voice a little bit. I've been fighting a little bit of a cold, so I'm a little scratchy. I'm sure I'll be kind of gone by the end of the chat. But yeah, so today we're going to go through and discuss kind of everything soup to nuts about the Thargoids. A little history about them, a little history about the war, kind of what's going on now, because it was actually very fortuitous timing of this since they've begun to invade again. And we'll talk about ships, outfitting, engineering, how to get started, techniques, and after we have a discussion for a little bit. So the first visually, guys, will be a little boring because we're going to stay focused on more of a conversation here. Then we'll actually jump into combat. We'll go take out a couple. I'm not sure what you guys were thinking. I was thinking we'd maybe start with a Cyclops, or maybe we just start with a Basilisk, and we'll talk about the different ranks and kind of go from there. So yeah, if you guys, and forgive me guys if there's general questions in chat about other stuff, more than likely I'm going to be ignoring that today and stay focused on Thargoid stuff. And if it's more questions about gameplay mechanics, we're not going to get into that so much today. Maybe later when we get into the actual combat. But if you've got questions about the groups and that kind of thing, the main goal today is not only to talk about the Thargoids, but to let you guys know about AXI, who they are, what they are, how to join them, all that. And so with that, why don't I kick it to you, Gluttony? Why don't you go right to that? Tell everybody what you guys are, who you guys are, how they get in touch, that kind of stuff.
That would be great. So yes, the AXI, the Anti-Xeno initiative, is a initiative that I founded, and with me today, 100 Rob, Mgram are two of the overseers that I have assisting me with the group. Maligno, who is also a part of AXI, and also Canon. It has been a tremendous help in terms of helping organizing and also taking much strides in the anti-Xeno field, so to speak. So yes, we were founded in 3303 November 15th, and that was when Thargoid somewhat returned to us around that time when we began, well, Thargoid combats and also getting to know Thargoids better in a way. Well, at first, we were first encountered Thargoids in 2849, and then we staggered onward with some more recent interaction in the 32nd century. But as we know, to be more immediate, 3303 is somewhat our starting point with the Thargoids and also the beginning point of the Anti-Xeno initiative. So what we do is we are a academy for those who are aspiring to learn more about how to combat against the Thargoid threat, and also for those who are very experienced veteran players, veteran pilots that want to take on more challenging and targeted strikes. So with both intent in mind, we're somewhat very much of a mix. Like I said, a academy and then also a coordination platform. So throughout the years of our encounter with the Thargoid, starting in 3303, we first encountered the Cyclops variant, which is one of the 4 variants that we currently know of the Interceptors. But that's for another elaboration to somewhat distinguish between the Scouts and the Interceptors, which are 2 separate classes of the Thargoid vessels. But to save that for a later discussion, we move from that point on to where we started to discover that they have actual bases, Thargoid bases, that are stationed on planets. As we know that they prefer ammonia planet, that they're ammonia-based life form. That's as far as we know. And in addition to that, besides the Thargoid bases that we have discovered on the ground on planets, we have also discovered Thargoid barnacle sites, which are their resupply stations. Well, not exactly stations, but they're apparently seeds that extract material from the planet, and then the Thargoids interceptors come by and apparently extract that material from the barnacle sites. In
And
addition
the
to
barnacles were discovered, just to toss in real quick, like 4 years ago, a long time ago, right? I mean, that we like the very first barnacle sites. Am I remembering that right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
I believe the barnacle sites were discovered very early on as well. I'm not exactly sure which one came first, but I know they pretty much came into existence around the same time
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
discovery.
yeah. And just to toss out real quick, if you're looking at the barnacle sites, there's one specifically, and if you guys ping me in Discord later, I can get you the address for it. There's a barnacle forest, and I believe there's only the one. Is that right, guys, or have there been more?
No, there's actually several
Oh, there.
barnacle
Okay.
forests
Okay,
out there.
gotcha. So the barnacle forests are essentially just this large area of barnacles that all seem interlinked, and there's a central barnacle, and they're incredibly cool and creepy if you've never been to one. I love them. I think they're fantastic.
They're
Yes, and
also one of
sometimes
the best places for getting meta alloys because they don't seem to deplete like the normal barnacles do.
Oh,
So
interesting.
normal
Oh, okay.
barnacles have a habit of depleting where you won't be able to get resources from them anymore, the normal barnacles. For whatever reason, most of the barnacle forests I've seen, they just don't.
right. The meta alloys is an essential material that we believe is crucial to the construction of Thargoid ships, vessels, weaponry, and so on and so forth. We have somewhat adapted the material as well for our own use, but yes, the barnacles are definitely a iconic site for the Thargoids. Actually, if you visit them, sometimes you will be visited by Thargoid interceptors as well. So besides the Thargoid base and barnacles, we also, in the more recent times, attempted a leap into their region, which is the Cole 70 sector, with the cannon flagship Gnosis. It definitely was a brave attempt, and we're glad to say that AXI was on board when it was intercepted and pulled out of hyperspace when it attempted to jump. It was then that we discovered the final, so far, interceptor variant, which is the Hydra.
And we're going all the way
There is
back to the Gnosis debacle that I'm thinking of,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's what you're referencing. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yes. So the Gnosis was on board the Gnosis were quite a lot of curious scientists and explorers, and with some of us as well armed AX forces to escort the megaship. Unfortunately, it was pulled out of hyperspace, and there were a lot of losses, but we're happy to report that most of us made it back
Oh,
intact.
you guys actually really scored in that whole thing. It was the explorers, and I'll just a very brief history of this, guys. This was what, September a year ago, so September of 18.
Yeah, roughly.
They announced that the Gnosis, the cannon megaship, was going to make this jump into a region of space that was normally inaccessible. So a bunch of explorers got all excited. Hey, what could be there? Blah blah blah, right? And so a bunch of people made the roughly 1,000 light year trip to where it was, to be on it when it jumped. And I mean, I want to say I remember that the stats were something like over 10,000 commanders were there.
Yeah, around 11,000.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Fair enough. And when it made the jump, as Gluttony's talking about, essentially Frontier God handed it, and the story was that the Thargoids grabbed it. Well, instead of jumping the 500-ish light years it was supposed to, it jumped like what, 7, 6? Right, it
Yeah.
was next to nothing. Not only did they screw that up in terms of 4 hours before it actually happened, it got announced in Galnet, so we all knew it was going to happen before it even happened. And then when you spawned into the instance, if you lifted off, they didn't turn off the no fire zone, so you'd immediately be attacked by a Thargoid, and if you shot back, you get wanted. Now you die, you respawn back in the bubble in detention. So it was an unbelievable disaster in terms of PR and what everybody expected and wanted, save for the combat guys, because the new, as Gluttony was getting at, the new variant, the Hydra, attacked then. So yeah, so if you hear about the Gnosis debacle, this is what we're talking about.
And if I can interject,
Please.
thing is that it was clear that Frontier was intending to reveal the Hydra during that jump, but the photos and videos of the new variant was actually spoiled because it was actually spawning in the normal incursions and infestations at that point.
That's
Some
right.
random
That's right. It was,
people
wasn't it? That's right. That's
found
right.
it out, and we basically scrambled several wings of our people and were searching the reported locations, but it seems Frontier pulled the switch basically immediately, and we had dozens and dozens of threat 8 and 9 non-human signal sources, but that were all conveniently completely empty.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Speaking of discovery and also unexpected discoveries, we did, as the story unfolded with the Thargoids, discover the Inra bases scattered around the human bubble, where it spoke of what had happened in previous conflict with the Thargoids, including inhumane experimentation, um, experimentation of prototyping their hyperdrive, and quite a lot of insight into the history that we had with the Thargoids that could be found around the human bubble. Besides that, the conflict escalated expectedly, and we now have to contend with incursion and also infestation, which actually recently went on a hiatus before it just came back in the new year of 3306. In addition to that, with their more recent return, not as in now, but the previous return, they actually attacked Professor Palin, who is a lead researcher in the in the Xeno field in general, and his base was actually attacked to the point where he had to abandon it and relocate, as some of you might be aware. That is where we actually discovered a fifth supposed variant of the Thargoid interceptor called Orthus. If anyone would like to expand on that, that would be great.
Yeah,
sure.
I can
If you wanna do it.
probably also go on that one if anybody, or I guess I think unfortunately we don't have dictatorship here, but yeah, there were people who found out that if you go and warp drop to the old Palin's base, there is a single interceptor that immediately wants to leave and just full speed ahead and just enters warp and leaves. There wasn't much time to get a scan on it, but our pilots have managed it, specifically Ariana Stormrage. Got a first confirmed full scan. And then another commander by the name of Tideship managed to ram the interceptor to the ground and kill him, basically preventing him from leaving the instance.
It
So
was
what
a
is
very
curious?
interesting sort of
Yes.
buggy instance because at the time of it happening, we noticed a few inconsistencies. When we got a tissue sample, it was a basilisk tissue sample, a bit odd. If you looked at, say, like your heads-up display on the left, the sort of the symbol that you usually have, which would be like almost like a rank insignia for the variant, had a big no stamped across the top of it, and there was just a bunch of other things that didn't seem quite right. So we're looking at it thinking, okay, maybe it's just meant to be a spoiler, maybe it's not meant to be there yet. We weren't really quite sure there, and it was an interesting scenario. So about what was it, maybe a week later, it disappeared, and we haven't seen it since.
Right, and a few interesting feature on the Orthus variant is that it seemed to have many barnacles on its pedals, and that its cockpit is noticeably very different from all the other variants. So some speculate that this could be a Palin recreation of a Thargoid vessel, or that this could be a seeding variant that is very different from the other existing four variants, or that this could be the supposed two different races of Thargoids. But of course, these are just speculations. We are actually holding a lot of hope for what is in store in the future. But yeah, as we have somewhat chased the Thargoids out of the Pleiades sector, they have retreated to the Witchhead sector, which is where we are currently. Right now, we are seeing that they are coming back and attacking both the Pleiades sector and the Witchhead sector, where we recently established.
Yeah, so one quick remark about the authors. Just, what was it, today? Or yesterday? I think yesterday. On stream, Will kind of made the remark that the authors was just a bug, which I guess is obviously an ambiguous remark, considering that when we first acquired the first scan, like on the place where the usual Thargoid markings are supposed to be, there was a giant no, as in No,
Okay.
plastered in that
As in
place.
English.
Yes, as in
English,
English.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
It just made no sense, and we were very confused.
Frontier.
Yeah, we kind of after that, and again, as mentioned, the scan basically returned the fact that that new interceptor was basically a copy paste of Basilisk in terms of hull values, heart count, and other stats, and that giant no in plain sight. We kind of assumed that it was either an like unintended release, let's just say, or something went very wrong. And not a week later, that Thargoid was gone from that place and have not been seen since.
So yes, as we have gone, well, as the Thargoids have gone somewhat of a hiatus, we actually now have just witnessed their recent return in the new year. In fact, that it caught everyone by surprise. I think yesterday that we were very, very well. I wouldn't say very pleased, but I think quite a lot of our pilots are itching to hone their skills once again.
Oh, I
with
think
us.
it's great. I'm thrilled that specifically that the AX conflict zones are back. And why don't I let you guys, just since I brought that up, Gluttony, why don't you quickly explain what those are for folks? Because I think that's the best. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's the best Thargoid combat, certainly for beginners.
Right. It might not be the best to jump in right away into a Thargoid conflict zone, but it's definitely a good way to test your metal somewhat. But yes, there are two states that is involved with Thargoid conflict zones: infestation and incursion. Incursion is where Thargoid conflict zone actually come into existence, whereas infestation is somewhat of a precursor to the emergence of an incursion system. There are methods to prevent an incursion, but not a lot of them are very ambiguous and untested, so I won't spread any false information here. But infestation should usually come before incursion, but sometimes incursion just happens, like what happened yesterday and what we have today. So Thargoid conflict zones are like, unlike normal conflict zones, it spawns Thargoid scouts
Mm-hmm.
and then Thargoid interceptors of different variant, and usually it ends up with a Hydra variant.
Well, and
So
the thing
it's
that
a good.
Sorry, just to say
Go
the
ahead.
thing that I like about him so much, and I'm sorry, I was responding to chat, so if you said this, forgive me, is the fact that there's other human ships there, right? Like a traditional conflict zone that are essentially going to help you out, and that's kind of why I made the comment that I think it's a good place to start for large, for Cyclops level or Interceptor level combat, right?
It's a good place to start if you want to somewhat stop halfway, because the NPCs, unfortunately, very quickly will die to the fire of a Hydra
Yeah,
variant.
fair enough, fair enough. And
But
you know what? I've never been in one long enough for a Hydra to spawn, so fair enough.
right, and maybe we'll be able to see one today.
That'd
So
be great.
let's go ahead and get underway of what we aim to do today.
Okay, yeah. Let's see if we can actually get winged and up. Do you guys want to try giving me? Yeah, I still can't get to you, Rub.
Maybe we'll do your. I think we'll
Yeah,
try
do you
your
want to try
PG
mine real
because
quick?
I've
Okay,
been trying the whole.
okay. Let's do that. I usually like to do these in
So-
open, guys. I think my viewers know that. But given the
Yep.
instancing issues that can happen and stuff, it's just maybe easier. If we have to go to open, we will. But if we can get a better instance, everybody knows how bad instancing and networking is. And
Yeah, so there's a handful of issues with Thargoid instancing and combat at the moment where I mean, AXI as a group, we usually stick to things like open, but to avoid problems and to avoid fights just being
Yep.
incompletable, we stick to things like private groups and that sometimes.
Yep.
Um,
I've made the
I've-
comment here a lot that there's days you work elite and there's days you play elite, and in a lot of ways today we're working elite. Like in other words, this isn't about what we're doing or other people. This is about showing you guys what we're doing. So whatever makes that easier for us is what we're gonna do. And quickly before we do that, I'm showing on stream, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and land inside the damage station because I imagine there's a lot of people that have never seen this before. If you're a
Yeah,
VR player, it's awesome in VR. I think these
So I was going to add.
Yeah, please.
I was going to add a few things to sort of how that the infestation thing works in like the weekly, the way it used to work. So essentially, what would happen is that we would watch the Eagle Eye system, which is a handful of stations spread around that you can go and listen to, and they do a transmission at a particular time each day. And you can decode the transmission, and what it will do is it'll tell you the next handful of systems that are going to be infested. That'll happen. Sorry, is it the handful that are infested that week? I can't remember exactly.
The system changed a bit, like at least two
Yeah.
times since its introduction, so we are not completely sure what is intended and what isn't in terms of its current function. But yeah, in its current state, it just points at the systems that are already in the incursion. Previously, yeah, during the old system, it pointed to a set of systems that were at that time in infestation, and if the infestation was allowed to continue, they would translate into incursion.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
Now,
unfortunately,
when they're in incursion state, it'll be once every week. If the incursion isn't cleared, one station in that system will catch fire. Several AXCZs will show up, and an emergency mega ship will show up for each burning station to do transfer missions back and forth between them. Once the incursion state is cleared, the CZs disappear, but the station keeps burning.
yeah,
It
the
burns for the rest of the week.
stations, yeah, burn until the next tick. That's all. All
Yeah.
that thing happens on the ticks and so on.
And so, guys, for just a quick second, I'm going to ask us to be quiet for a moment. I'm going to turn up the game volume to full blast. And as I exit the station, because in true Frontier fashion, the audio here is really fantastic again. So I'm just going to let everybody enjoy that until I get outside the station. So give us just a second here. Explosion got me just as I was leaving. Like just banged me around a bit.
Yeah, so you got the top of the mouse up there.
Bonk. Yeah, so there you go. I just figured I'd let everybody enjoy that for a quick second because, again, especially if you're a VR player, I think they're just incredible when they first got announced. And as Dunkel said, very atmospheric, right? And I find, like we talked earlier about the barnacle forest and such, I find those just really wonderfully creepy. So yeah, okay. So sorry, back to what we were doing. And forgive me as I was looking at chat and stuff. Are we going to be fighting in this system? Is that right?
Yes, this is the system with combat zones, and so we can probably
go ahead and get out to Super Cruise.
Yeah, that would be the best.
Yeah.
For those wondering, I'll go ahead and paste in the system that we're in. We're out in Witchhead, and I'll also let me just show that on screen really quickly and show you how to find these on the map. Essentially, if you go to configuration, we're going to go to state. And if we turn everything off except incursion down here at the bottom, and then zoom out, it's a little hard to see. You can see that one, it's a little hard to see on here, but that one is lit up since I'm here. Are there any other systems around us that are? It doesn't look like it. Am I right?
You can just look for the damage station icons. If
That's
you go
actually,
to the
you know
last
what? You're right. That's a much better way to do it, isn't it?
Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look, all three systems are already cleared. All of the Pleiades is cleared. But if you want to still experience the burning stations, they are still there and they will continue to burn until the next Thursday. Unfortunately, conflict zones are only present at this time, only left in Witchhead Nebula, which is where we are, and I basically can bet that they will be clean by the end of the weekends.
And
So,
also that you mentioned burning stations, it's a good time to mention that there are people working diligently to restore those stations, and
Operation
they're the
IDA.
IDA.
Yeah, IDA. Yep.
Yes,
And I've
I'm
actually
sorry, I
featured
should
that.
say IDA.
Yeah, I've actually featured them on a stream before, just like this. So, yep, absolutely.
So, sort of to add to, like, we're talking about combat zones. There's, in terms of Thargoid combat, there's actually quite a few different ways you can fight them. The AXCZs are a thing that are special to these incursion states, which is something that's just come back now. But in terms of fighting, there's actually, you can fight them in lots of different ways almost all the time. So over the past few months, when we've had no CZs, we've had the Pleiades and the Witchhead sector have both had a massive amount of non-human signal sources in them. And these are essentially just temporary instances. They pop
Okay.
up, they disappear in those systems.
Sure.
And by looking at the threat level, you can actually identify what's in them, and you can go and see what you can do and give them a shot. There's also a few other places. There's things like damaged megaships at distress calls. Things like that are also good. They spawn interesting instances with multiple Thargoids in some cases.
Sure.
And some of our pilots have actually taken more recently. Sorry, that was
That's
alarm.
okay. No
More
worries.
recently, they've taken to fighting Thargoids in hyperspace with hyperdictions. We know that there are certain properties that get you hyperdicted when jumping from system to system. And when you get hyperdicted, there's a chance to get up to 4 interceptors at once. So for people like Maligno here, it's been quite interesting where he's managed to, along with those 4, spawn up to 7 Thargoids in one instance and take them on all at
Wow.
once.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely want to talk
Yeah.
about some of Maligno's feats here in just a little bit. Before we
So,
go,
yeah.
before we go there, before we go too much further, here's what I want to do next. Right. When we jump into the next thing, once we get into the instance, tell me if this is correct. If I unwing from you guys and I don't open fire, it should leave me alone, right?
No,
Okay,
Thargoids
it's gonna attack
are
me no matter what, right?
hostile. They are hostile by default. Like
Okay.
the interceptors themselves, if encountered on their own, they might not attack you. There are several triggers, but
Right. If
I'm
you get
not gonna go into
hyperdicted,
them
for
right
example,
now.
right? Yeah. Okay.
In
So
hyperdiction, there, yeah. But if any scouts are present in the
right,
state in
right,
the system, in
right.
this, even it seems like even if you kill them all before the interceptors show up, they will still be automatically aggroed,
Okay.
aggressive
Gotcha.
on spawning.
Gotcha.
So in conflict zones, they will be aggressive by default,
Okay,
basically.
so here's what we'll do though. So once we drop in, I'm gonna basically just stay defensive then while you guys essentially fight. Because the next thing I wanted to talk about before I jump in at least and start talking in flying combat is talking about ships and outfitting and engineering and some of those options and stuff for folks, right? But I do think it would be a good idea to get let's jump in. You guys can start fighting and maybe I'll just toss questions to you guys as possible. Gluttony and I can talk about most of it, and Rub, you and M. Graham can fight. That way, I can kind of focus on
Yeah,
that,
indeed.
if that makes sense to everybody.
Sure,
So
we'll try.
why
Okay,
don't?
I'll be dropping shortly
Okay,
in
great. I'll
three,
nav to
two,
you.
one.
Go.
So in terms of things like you mentioned ship builds, it's quite a big part of it. And for us, we spend a lot of time working on these things because they are very complicated when it comes to AX.
Yep.
More so that, like, when we talk about getting into AX combat, there's a few big hurdles that you need to get over. One of the biggest ones is engineering and building a ship. So for people who are interested in just getting into, say, Thargoid scouts, there's not too much to do there. They're pretty weak, and you can just break them with even normal weapons.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
when it comes to interceptors, you do need some really specialized stuff. So we're talking almost fully engineered ships. We're talking Guardian weapons.
Yep.
And it really has to be done in a particular way for you to actually have much of a chance.
Yeah, and let's and to talk about that first of all, guys, and if you don't mind, Iron Fist, if you could go find I've got a couple tutorials. If you could find my medium class AX tutorial and post in the URL, that'd be great. Because I've got a full guide that explains everything we're going to discuss today. So don't feel like you've got to remember everything we're talking about. It's it's like my other stuff. It's relatively short. It covers everything. But the main things, like you said, you're going to need is you're going to want. You probably could do it with an unengineered something like a vet or something once you're skilled at it, but you're going to want a lot of hull. You're going to want shields too, but at the same time, all of the Thargoids do basically phasing damage, meaning they're going to do hull damage through your shields, okay? So don't think you can show up with a big prismatic stack or a big shield stack and have, 500 or 1,000 hull and that you're going to survive this. I have found, and you guys correct me where I'm wrong here, I've found that I'm going to want something north of 2 to 2,500 integrity for armor, and then shields just become a nice buffer to that. In fact, maybe I even noticed, I'm in the external camera right now, I might have even noticed that one of you guys was running shieldless. Is that right, or was it just a bug?
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
are
so
many
I'm
different
running
approaches you
shieldless.
can take when it comes to combating the Thargoids, but for starters, for people who are just getting into Thargoid combat, I recommend stacking very high in terms of hull and at least some kind of shielding, but by weave.
Agreed.
Mostly, unless you're
Yep.
using a large ship.
Yep.
But once you become more advanced, you'll learn techniques such as orbiting and then cold running. That's something for the more advanced pilots.
Exactly. And so for the new guys, I think the key things too are, first of all, a key thing are the weapons. We talked a second ago about the fact that the scouts, you can use human weapons on those. I find that overcharged multi-cannons tend to be the best. Gimbaled overcharged multi-cannons. What do you guys find that are best just to nuke scouts as fast as you can?
AXMC or Anti-Xeno multi-cannon, large turreted or medium turreted seem to
You
be
like
the
those better?
easiest.
I
Okay.
would I would advise large turret. Yeah, I've
Okay,
done a
okay.
lot of tests and math on that, and Thargoid scouts are not completely immune to like normal weapons, but they have 77% resistance.
Okay, good to
So
know.
you
Okay.
you take your normal DPS and basically deal
Cut it by
33% of that.
Yeah, gotcha. So,
And yeah, so large turreted multi-cannons, AX multi-cannons are the way to go if you can fit them. Medium ones, not so much, because unfortunately, energy
Surge
surge.
incoming.
3, 2, 1,
Paul.
hold.
oh, and I'm in my
Okay.
external camp.
So
I don't know if you
just
guys
to
saved.
interject.
There are two,
Yeah.
there are two. They're
Just to
intercepted.
interject for a moment. So we've just
One
had
is the Cyclops. What's the other one?
Yeah. I'm just gonna explain that quickly. So
Yeah, please.
we've just had 2 interceptors spawn. We've cleared out enough scouts. We've moved on to the next phase. Now, in a combat zone, 2 interceptors will spawn up at this point, and they'll do an EMP when they arrive. So you've got to be ready to block that. For some reason, mine didn't work, but
Yeah.
the 2 interceptors we've got, that'll be any of the 3 variants besides Hydra. So it could be a Cyclops, Basilisk, or a Medusa.
It's
what
two
did you
scouts
say we get?
it's two Cyclops for us.
Okay, so that's nice and easy. So a Cyclops variant, the way they all work is essentially they have Thargoid's interceptors have hearts. You need to destroy the hearts one by one
Hold
to be
on.
able to actually kill the interceptor.
Don't jump there. Don't jump there yet. Like, great
Yep,
that
sure.
let's finish talking about outfitting and stuff before we get too technical into.
So
the-
yeah,
into
about
how-
about
right.
about AX multi-cannons. Problem is that for some reason, no medium multi-cannons are very weak in comparison to their large ones. So if you can fit large ones, and if you can't, just ignore the medium ones. Like the normal scaling of weapon sizes for some reason doesn't apply
seem
for
to
them.
apply. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and so the normal. I'm gonna get zapped. Yep, I'm getting zapped.
And so these, for everybody to know, so there's 2 classes of anti-Xeno weapons. There's what we're talking about now, the AX multi-cannons and AX missiles. Those are just purchasable in any station that sells AX modules. So Jameson, lots of different stations.
Yeah, and they are purchasable at planetary military not installation settlements. That's the that
so
and
those,
Jameson obviously.
you can just go buy, right? We'll talk about I'm in a Crate Mark II right now. I tend to feel like that's a really great ship. We'll let you guys chime into that in a second. But these you just buy, right? So you don't have to go unlock anything for that. If, however, you're going to get into this and get serious about it at all, and you want to take down interceptors like we're doing right now, the big guys like the one I'm zoomed in on right now, you're going to want the Guardian weapons, and you're specifically going to want the Guardian Gauss Cannon, which is a medium and a small. It's essentially a railgun that does Thargoid damage, and it does a lot of damage. So using it against the hearts, and again, we'll get into more specific details of what that means in a second, is really the weapon you're going to want. There are then the plasma chargers, which is very similar to a plasma accelerator, and a shard cannon, which is very similar to the frag cannons. Those come in, unfortunately, small, medium, large, and you unlock individually the small, medium, and large, and the turreted, fixed, and gimbaled variants. Right, so I think there's
Yes, yes.
24 total Thargoid weapons if you want to unlock all of them, which is absurd.
Yeah, thankfully or unfortunately, again, depending on your view, most of those are not very viable for combat, for
Agreed.
AX combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thankfully you don't need to unlock
All of them, certainly.
all of those to be viable. Like the
Yeah.
only real thing you need is Gauss, and thankfully it only comes in fixed. And turreted weapons, turreted AX weapons in general, and Guardian ones are severely handicapped by the fact that gunners and well, first of all, they don't work as turrets unless you are in a multi-crew. There's just at all. They actually have a specific description mentioning that. But even if they did, the gunners, multi-crew gunners, are unable to sub-target modules, so they are unable to fire at hearts.
Great.
So
And so
even
we
if
all
you
know,
are
we all know multi-crew's pretty worthless anyway, sadly. Let me quickly point out, you guys will see on screen right now the missiles that are heading out. Those are caustic missiles. So if you're struck by a caustic missile, it's going to leave caustic residue on your ship, and you have two choices to clean that off. One, oh shit, am I under attack? I am, hold on. I was in my external camera with my HUD off. There we go, let me get out of here. And if you have those out, you want, sorry, what was I doing? If you get hit by one of those, you've got two options. You can use a decontamination limpet to clean yourself or a wingmate, or you can run your heat above 180%. Is that right?
The 250% will immediately clear all caustic you have.
Okay.
And like it bears a special description, I guess, a bit more details, because caustic can stack. So you can, well, unfortunately we cannot demonstrate it right now, but when you have one layer of caustic, you have that green health bar that pulses roughly once a second.
That's right.
If you have multiple layers, it will pulse faster, and thankfully the layers by themselves decay down to one layer. So if you get several layers, it will just deal a lot of damage fast for a while, and then decay all the way down to one, but it will not go away by itself. You have to clean it some way.
And by the way,
it will stay forever until you die.
Yeah, and touching down on a station, you can't. It's not like life support where you just cross the mail slot. You actually have to touch down, right? I found that if you run to 180% for a few seconds, that'll do it. I didn't actually realize 250 would do it immediately. And a quick way to go ahead.
The lower temperatures than 100 and 250% are going to remove it, but not immediately, and it seemed to be inconsistent between ships or even between people. So the only concrete data we can recommend is 250%. That will for sure remove it immediately.
Yeah, that's fair. And quickly talking about hull and shields, Thargoids do absolute damage.
So no, they do caustic damage.
No, hold on. But what I'm getting at is you don't need to worry about resistances. Okay.
Yes, so, I mean you are technically correct, but I kind of have to correct your.
No, you're thank you.
Because several people still continue to tell us that they do absolute damage. This is not correct. They do caustic damage. If you go to your, you can probably demonstrate it on stream. If you go to your ship stats on your right-hand panel and scroll down, you'll see that your armor have caustic resistance. Your shields don't have caustic resistance, and there's literally no way to gain caustic resistance on shields. But you can get some caustic resistance on hull. We'll probably talk in details as to why you shouldn't, but you can. And Thargoids, all of their attacks deal caustic damage.
And do they deal 100% caustic damage, or is it
yes, they deal 100% caustic damage. They completely ignore all of your normal thermal kinetic and explosive resistances.
Right.
And they have phasing of about the same 10 to 9%.
Just to differentiate, that caustic damage is not the same caustic we're talking about, where it's the damage over time effect.
Right.
It's essentially a damage type the damage over time effect is a different thing.
That's
so
right,
you
that's
The
can have
debuff,
Great
basically,
way to
yeah.
say it.
That
Yeah.
one also ignores our resistances, so you may, I guess, just equate it.
Yeah.
But the caustic goo, as it's called, or caustic substance, technically speaking, is another thing entirely. It's just a debuff that decreases your hull over time, irregardless of any other diminishing, like
Let me interrupt real
armor
quick. So
rating
I've
or
got
sure.
a caustic missile inbound. I just selected my next highest threat, so it's inbound right now. Right now, I'm just turning and boosting to run from it. They will expire in about what,
Yes.
30 seconds? Is that what it is?
They
Yeah.
have a relatively low
Yeah.
lifetime, which is makes
Yeah.
running away from them is definitely one of the better
Yep. Defenses.
tactics.
Yeah.
Which is why slower ships like Type 10 are generally considered ill suited for any sort of combat
Agreed.
against Thargoids, because those cannot outrun caustic
Yeah.
missiles.
Yeah.
Caustic missiles go, I think, about 300 meters per second,
Okay. Okay.
roughly. I don't remember
Yeah,
off
they're
the top of my
slow,
head.
and we just saw
For
mine explode
yeah,
on screen.
with a single exception of Hydra caustic missiles, which for some reason are
Oh, interesting.
considerably faster.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. And we'll talk about the different classes here in a second as well.
Yeah.
Let me go back to the hull conversation real quick. The main reason I bring this up, when you're engineering hull, there's no reason to use reactive or mirrored. You would always use military, and you're always
Yeah.
going to go all heavy duty deep plate on all your booster, all your hull reinforcements, and the base hull for engineering, right? So again,
Yes,
don't
yes.
worry about your resistances at all, unless you were to do. Oh, I just got shut down. Unless you were to do what do they call the caustic hull reinforcements? Meta alloy hull reinforcements, is that them?
There are two ways to get caustic resistance on your hull. First of all, it's Guardian stuff. They have 5% of caustic resistance per module. And metalloy hull reinforcements. They have 3.
Okay.
We've done extensive math and shipbuilding theory crafting on them, and the 3% is just a local AXI meme as to how ineffective and honestly insulting they are in their stats. They're so not useful and
Yeah.
so not worth it, then you're basically wasting your resources unlocking them.
Yep. The last couple
They're
I just said
Go on.
the last couple modules I'll mention are you'll see the Guardian Power Plant and the Guardian Distributor, and while those can certainly be effective for this, the benefit of those are essentially, this is a rough estimate, they're basically a grade. The Power Plant's like a grade 3 overcharged, and the Distributor's like a grade 3 weapon focused. Again, not exactly, but close to that. If you're the benefit to those is, and I'm running again for the missile if you guys see. The benefit to those are you can essentially unlock them once, and then you can just buy them whenever you need them and not have to engineer things all the time. So if you're the type of player who's going to engineer stuff and you're going to max stuff out, which for this is quote unquote better, they're not there's not a big reason to get them. But if you're a casual player who doesn't have all the engineers unlocked and you don't want to go grind out mats and that sort of thing, they can be a very effective way to get yourself more power, a better distributor without having to. And they're, if I remember right, they're lighter than the standards. So
I think they're actually heavier.
I thought the power
and more
heavier.
was. Well, hold on. For the power generated. So sometimes you can run, like in an exploration ship where you might run a class 4A standard, you could run a 3A Guardian, which would make it a little lighter for the same power generated.
I'll have to brush the stats again, but yeah. Pulse.
Oh,
I was
did not
outside
catch
of
it
it.
in time.
Yeah.
Okay, so
What
now
variant is this?
let's talk
Shall,
about
let me get in range.
that pulse. All right. So that pulse you guys just saw on my screen, and I was out of its range, so I was safe.
It's
from
another
it.
Cyclops. Another
Yeah.
Cyclops.
So
Okay.
what I'm going to go, I'm just going to go. I'll go through the variants and the mechanics and the basics you want me.
Well, let me talk about the shutdown specifically, and
yeah,
then let's jump to the variants, right?
Quickly explain what it basically. A shutdown field is a disabling field with a range of about 15 kilometers. Although it's been inconsistent in wings, we have people hit by it over 25 kilometers away, but that might be a bug. We have not conducted extensive testing as to its maximum range, but basically, think of it as covering the whole instance. If
Let me
you're
quickly
in, you're
interrupt. Hold on, let me
probably gonna
quickly
get
interrupt.
hit.
Does anybody have decon
Yeah.
limpets? Because I did just get hit.
I do.
I got
Okay,
it.
can somebody come decon me real quick? And you
I
guys,
got it.
and watch my hull.
Okay.
I'm dropping pretty damn fast.
Yeah, you were standing in the
Yeah.
post-death
Yeah,
caustic
I was
code,
just
which
not
is
paying
Yep,
attention.
I
Oh,
got
sorry,
it.
Gluttony.
Oh boy. Oh,
Sorry.
hi there.
Yeah.
so yeah. The shutdown field is released after the second to last heart has been destroyed, and usually only that. Although there have been some bugs that made them release that extra times. But ideally, a single interceptor will only release it once, and they usually release it when they warp in, if that's the case. For example, in conflict zones, they always warp in, so each an interceptor will account for a total of 2 shutdown fields.
Yeah.
And if you are getting an instance where an interceptor is accompanied by scouts in normal non-human signal sources, the warping interceptor will also release a shutdown field.
I don't think it's stuck.
So essentially,
Oh, the
with
scout took it off
shutdown-
from you.
Yeah, you need to stay a while without any damage. 1 second, let me...
I got it.
I'll kill the swarm.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
It's dead.
So with the special mechanics, so Thargoid interceptors have a bunch of special abilities. EMP is one of them. The way these special abilities work is that every time you break a Thargoid heart, they use one of their special abilities. Now, it's a predictable pattern. We know how it works. It's essentially you break the first heart, they use the lightning ability.
Gluttony, was
Every
that
other
decon? Oh,
heart?
there you go. Okay, sorry.
Right? Every other heart, they launch a caustic missile. And the second last heart, the one second before the last heart, is always an EMP. Essentially, they'll always happen in that order. There are ways to bypass it. We've got some details on that in our documentation, but I'll go into that later. Essentially, these will always happen. The lightning at the start, you break the first heart, the Thargoid it's about to do it on 100 rub. He goes into a lightning mode and he'll chase after you very fast, trying to use his lightning attack. The lightning attack is a shutdown sort of thing as well. It doesn't shut your ship down in the same way, but rather it can selectively shut down random modules and it will actually stop you from moving.
Yeah.
So it'll freeze your ship in place. Regardless of FA off, you can't move.
Okay, and
It also does.
I call it
real
force
vision.
lightning. It looks like, the force lightning from,
Yeah.
from the Star.
Yeah,
Many
well,
people
sometimes
do.
some of us call it getting Palpatined.
Okay.
Now
gotcha.
it can also happen at other times in the fight. The lightning happens on the first heart, but should you get too close throughout the fight, about 700 to 800 meters, it will lightning you anyway.
Basically, yeah, that ability becomes unlocked after the first heart has been destroyed, and then Interceptor will use it whenever it can. It has a cooldown. Basically, Interceptor has a cycle, normal one, when it attacks things for a while and then turns away and flies in a straight line for a bit. That's what we call a cycle or reload or any synonym. Basically, that's when it's all of its abilities recharge. At the end point of that cycle is when the interceptor turns around and begins coming back to you. At that point, all of its abilities, well, honestly, the main cannon and its lightning has been recharged, and he can use it again immediately. If you're getting close, if you follow that interceptor thinking you can score some free damage, beware, because once it turns around, it can zap you immediately.
Yeah.
New
and
interceptor, get ready for EMP.
And so let me explain that, guys. You'll see on my screen, I
3,
just
2,
changed
1,
to a
pulse,
field shutdown
hold.
neutralizer, and
Hold
I
on.
just fired that. And it
Another
works.
interceptor's in
Another,
here.
hold it.
I
Now-
fired mine too early.
There we
damn it.
go.
That's
So-
Basilisk.
Yeah. So
Okay,
a little note there: the shutdown field neutralizer, when you use it, once it's fully charged, it'll also
Yeah, we have a
protect
Basilisk.
anyone within 3 kilometers of it.
Right.
So anyone who's 3 kilometers nearby, they'll also be protected from it.
And so let me also just touch on that real quick. That also works like ECM, guys. So you press and
Yeah,
hold
basically.
it, and when you release it is when it pops, or if it hits the full, if you let it go to full charge and it hits.
No, I mean,
kilometers.
it works while you hold it.
Right,
and
right.
if you release it, it goes on a cooldown and you cannot hold it again for a while.
Right,
So you
right.
need to time it. And the thing is, it eats your system capacitor like crazy. So you cannot expect to be able to hold it for more than 10 seconds, even on a big ship.
And so, okay, so let me back up one quick sec and explain to everybody. We keep talking about, hearts and all this stuff. And so what you guys will see in a minute when I can get close enough is on the petals, the wings, whatever you want to call them, generally the petals,
Rob missiles.
you're gonna see a red area that gets exerted once you've done enough damage to the Thargoid for it to exert. Right? Did that one just die by?
Yeah. So essentially, I just broke the heart off that one.
Okay.
The basilisk. The way it works is every time they start off with a certain amount of hearts, you deal 20% of its total health, and that'll exert the heart.
Yeah,
so
total
once you
percent.
get that 20%,
Quick
Yeah, I know.
remark.
So
It's
once
20% of its
the-
current maximum health.
current maximum health. So it'll be 20%, then it'll be like say 16 point something percent, then it'll be so over time they get easier. So once
Right,
it's exerted, that heart will start glowing. While it's glowing, you've got a window of opportunity to deal damage to it. It'll eventually stop exerting, but while it's exerted, you can deal damage to that heart in particular. So you've got to hit it directly, and once you break it off, the Thargoid starts doing its next phase kind of thing. It'll pop a new shield, it'll start again, it'll deploy a new swarm, and it'll do one of its special abilities.
Why don't you, real quick, somebody discuss? We'll talk about the swarm here in a second. Boy, my rail aim sucks today. Why don't we talk about the scanner that we haven't used today? Why we haven't used it, and how a new commander would be using that?
Yeah, I have a pet peeve about that scanner. Problem is, it is a very good thing, and if you can see by default, if you target a Thargoid, you see basic scan complete, resource scan ready, and you basically don't have any more information about that Thargoid. And if you go to the left panel of a target, you will not actually be able to have sub-target things on that interceptor. That's because you need to complete the Xeno scan or research scan, I guess, as game calls it, on that interceptor to be able to see its internals. Problem is that scanner has 500 meters range, which is entirely impossible to maintain in any large ship in any combat situation, or honestly, most medium ships. And considering that the Lightning has about the same range, you're basically asking to get zapped if you try to get it after the first heart. Which is why people.
No, go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
Which is usually like people just have to make a personal preference choice, use it or not use it. If you're going to use it, as I do, because I prefer it, you will just have more information if you're able to scan the Thargoid. If you're not going to use it, you just will have to rely on your Mark 1 eyeballs as usual, just a knowledge as to where to hit and where to strike. The scanner itself, again, provides the opportunity to sub-target hearts if you have scanned the interceptor. It passively provides the swarm count, or will show the size of the swarm. And it will automatically reveal types of scouts. Without that, you will not be able to see the scout types.
Let me interrupt.
Thankfully,
hold on,
one clip. Okay, sure.
Let me interrupt just real quick and say, I just deployed a fighter. I just realized, should I not have done that? Or the fighter's still fucking up these instances?
They just take aggro from the swarm and make it.
Yeah, that's why I
kill,
deployed one, and I just realized because I know ship launch fighters can fuck up instancing right now, so I just didn't know if that was the truth. It's gonna probably die quick anyway.
Kind of ignoring the swarm anyway, because NPCs in conflict zones, NPCs can usually just eat it and tank it, so you can use it problem right now. But in general, if people want to kill the swarm, by deploying this SLF, you're just making their life harder.
Yeah. So I'll sort of explain the ship launched fighters a little bit there. The Guardian ship launched fighters, they're specially made for AX. There's a reason, like the Anti-Xeno initiative, we typically suggest not using them. There's a few reasons for that. Primarily, they're more or less going to make the fight harder for you, and you're missing out on essentially hard points you could be using something else. So the two sort of core issues with them are, if you deploy them with a NPC pilot, it will distract the swarm only for a few seconds. While it's distracted, the swarm flies in an irregular path, which makes it very difficult to use the flak cannon, which is our primary swarm destroying weapon.
And I'm gonna go. I've got one with me, so I'm gonna use that here in just a little bit.
Yeah. So secondly, the ship launched fighter itself has very, very little hull. It's got decent shields, but it's got practically
like
zero
paper.
hull.
Yeah, it's absolute paper.
Yeah, it's absolute paper. So, but the problem is that Thargoids deal phasing damage, so they don't care about your shields. They just go straight through it. So if your swarm or the intercept or anything hits your ship launched fighter, it explodes, just like that. There's no patience at all. So on a Cyclops, you might get like 2 or 3 hits in and you'll be okay. But on anything higher than that, as soon as the swarm gets within like breathing distance of you, you're dead. It just
and on
disappears.
my stream right now, guys, you should be able to see the heart that just went down, and the swarm was just kicking my ass. That's why my hull is so weak right now. I literally, guys, might have to jump out because before we started this, guys,
you can
I gotta
safely go out,
Yeah,
or at least go repair.
CGS swarms on you. You might want to boost a bit faster.
I got a fine leaving the station before we started, so if I die, I'm gonna spawn back back at detention. So I am.
You better boost.
Jump out. Yeah, I'm gonna.
You better boost.
Oh, this thing's fast.
Yeah, you can safely go to the rescue ship and repair and come back. We'll probably be still fighting that basilisk. But yeah, a quick remark, I guess, on the SLFs. They used to be useful on big ship builds because they, until or something like that patch, they used to destruct the interceptor itself. Yeah, so you could use it as a bait, basically, because it will just evaporate when the interceptor looks at it. But you can make some distance, which was useful when you just cleared the first heart. Oh, I'm going to get rebooted. Somebody please take aggro. I decided to take the worst time to reboot. So yeah, you can use to make some distance after the first heart and not get zapped by the first lightning, because the first lightning is a bit special. The
So in general, we usually advise against ship launch fighters for those reasons, as they do typically make the fight harder.
Yeah. And since that update, the interceptors just ignore the ship launch fighter, so you cannot even use it in that particular purpose. They're just entirely useless.
There is one thing I personally like about the ship launch fighters. Again, for the guys in VR, the cockpits of them, flying them is fantastic.
They are very pretty, but unfortunately completely useless.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of using them with a friend, I would, if you want to fly with a friend, they would still be okay. And I've done it myself. I've actually got a video where me and 2 other people, we took on a double Medusa fight with Sajuk, one of our pilots, and 2 ship launch fighters. And essentially the entire fight was the main ship kiting them, and the 2 ship launch fighters just span around the Goids shooting them. Now, we had to be really careful. We had to constantly fly away every few minutes to get rid of the swarms, to get them out of the fight, because if they got near us, we would die instantly. But outside of that, it was actually pretty fun. It's really the only realistic way to be able to use them properly is with someone else. You need to have another person flying them for them to be actually effective.
Sure, exactly, right. So let's see. So now let's talk about. So we've talked about the hearts a little bit. Why don't we, Gluttony? Why don't you take us through the different classes that we've got? Like we've talked about. We've mentioned things like the Basilisk and the Cyclops. Why don't you talk through, the different versions that there are, and kind of the uniqueness of fighting each of those.
Sure, I would love to, but M. Graham said he was very interested.
Oh, that's great.
Topic, so I thought,
great.
it
Go
would probably
for it,
be best for him.
I'll let you take the next topic after that. That's fantastic. No, go for it.
Before that, I'll ask for someone to put up their wing beacon so I can actually get back in the fight.
My beacon is back up.
And to throw, let me just quickly mention. Hold on, Matt. Let me mention that real quick. If you get into an instance and they pulse the EMP, even if you don't get shut down, it will turn off your wing beacon. So if you're doing this with wings and stuff like that, you're going to be turning your beacon back on quite a bit. So just be aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, interceptor variants. We've got, besides the scouts, which are sort of their own class on their own, we've got the interceptors, and they're the big ones, the big flowers. They come in currently 4 variants. The 4 variants are essentially a scale from easiest to hardest. And it makes it quite easy because we often recommend people start off at the bottom, work your way up. It's a really nice little progression system. and you get sort of progressively more challenging as you go. Now, all the interceptors are essentially the same. There are a few in terms of like their base tactics and abilities. The Basilisk is special, and I'll get to that in a sec. So each interceptor has more hearts than the previous one. The Cyclops has 4, the Basilisk has 5, Medusa has 6, and the Hydra has 8, just to mess things up. They all deal essentially way more damage than the last version as well. So each one just does way more DPS, and they all have a lot more toughness and armor, and a much higher armor rating, which makes certain weapons get weaker and weaker the higher up you go. The Basilisk is special. The Basilisk is the sort of the second tier you got. It's got a higher speed than all the others. It has a max speed of about 530 meters per second, whereas the other ones, I think it was 450. They're all, that's sort of their top speed range. So the Basilisk, we call him the Speedy Boy. He's a really interesting challenge because you do need to be able to either outrun him or come up with some other way to get around him. Any questions on it?
No, yeah, that's great. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, each interceptor, there's a few other differences you'll note as you go along. So in terms of how they all fight the same way, but because some have more hearts than others, you may take longer to get to, say, the EMP. Like the Hydra, the EMP doesn't happen right to the end of the fight. Where they all have different swarms, so interceptors deploy swarms, so as you've noticed throughout the fight, we've been talking about it a few times.
And I just engaged the swarm a second ago.
Yeah, so each variant actually has a different sized swarm as well. They go in multiple, so it's I think it's 32 for a Cyclops, yeah. 64, 96, then 128 for the Hydra. So the Hydra really has a huge swarm. Now, because of those sizes, they actually have slightly different formations. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, the swarm sort of flies in a bit of a formation. The Hydra ones and the Medusa ones, they have this formation where they go into a really wide ring, a really big circle, and that's really difficult to kill. We often refer to it as the ring. There's really not much you can do about it, except hope to be able to kill it over time. So yeah, as you go up, they do get really, really difficult. And to solo a Cyclops, we often consider that sort of the first major challenge for a lot of players. And we encourage them to start off there and just give it a shot, because it is a really interesting fight. It's a lot of fun.
You know, let's quickly, because we talked about that. I don't think we've really talked about yet. We've been in an AX conflict zone, most of the time. And as you guys see, the combat here is pretty intense. If you go to a system that has unknown signal sources.
Non-human signal sources.
Non-human, thank you. You're going to see a threat 5, and a threat 5 is either going to be scouts, 8 scouts if I remember right, or it's going to be a Cyclops, the base model one, right? Yeah. And that's a good place to go fight those, because when you drop into those instances, he's not going to be aggroed right away, and you can fly up to him and he's going to come up and check you out right away anyway, and that's where you can use the scanner to reveal all the sub-targets and the hearts, right? So that's really, and again, the tutorial video I've got, and Iron Fist, if you found that earlier and could pop that link in again, that'd be great. That video covers that in detail, and how to do that sort of combat.
That's basically the only intended time and place to use that scanner.
Right. You're never going to use it here.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
You will never be able to use it.
Yeah, as soon as they're aggroed and they're moving, you're never going to stay close enough to get that scan complete, because, like we said, you have to stay within that 500 meters, right?
Yeah, we've had pilots do it with, like, so we call it like a combat scan, but it is really bloody difficult.
I mean, I've seen it done, but yeah, it's really hard, really tough.
So
don't rely on that.
With soloing interceptors, which is sort of like within the Anti-Xeno initiative, we have a bunch of sort of achievements that we consider give pilots sort of progression. And soloing each interceptor variant is one of those sort of achievements we encourage people to try out. So for doing that, we recommend people use those non-human signal sources, where you can actually reliably find interceptors one by one. There are, like you said, the threat 5 will be a Cyclops, the threat 6 Basilisk, 7 Medusa, 8 will be a Hydra. Now there are some exceptions there. Currently, you can't find Hydra threat 8s in the Pleiades for some reason. We don't know why; it just stopped happening. And you can also find, say, if you drop into a threat 8, you may also get a Medusa and a bunch of scouts as well.
Yeah, they can vary
And that
essentially.
happens.
And the video guys that I've got, there's a table in that video that shows you all of the different options, different things that can happen.
Yeah.
And
So
you'll
yeah,
see,
you
guys,
can get all
hold on,
those
hold on.
different variants.
So this
and it
time,
can be a little
because
bit.
we saw the pulse, we could see visually that it was about to come. I fired off my field neutralizer, and this time, as you guys saw on stream, that I got it timed right, so I did not get hit this time. So I just wanted to throw that out real quick. And that binds as a module, and you'll see it's in one of my fire groups. If I show you guys my fire groups real quick, right? So down here, I've got the Xeno scanner and the shutdown field. Personally, I put those on the same. You can do whatever you want. Let me also ask something and point out something that people might be wondering, which is, we've talked about the fact that you've got to use AX weapons against these guys. Well, why am I seeing a bunch of lasers? Gluttony, why are you guys all firing lasers at these things?
So this is one of the more advanced tactics, I would say. So what we're using are beam lasers, and they're modded with thermal vent. So thermal vent is a experimental effect that allows you to dump your ship's heat into the target that you're hitting. So in this case, we're dumping our heat into the Thargoid. And the reason why we want to do that is it's keeping us cool. So it's constantly cooling our ship down, and the Thargoids are known to have extreme difficulties when it comes to targeting cold targets. So that includes silent running and running at a heat signature that's usually lower than about 25%. And that includes the swarm. So anything Thargoids related seem to have a difficulty targeting anything that has a low heat signature, which somewhat makes sense because ammonia-based life form are known to be very cold creatures. So they might have developed their targeting abilities based on temperature instead of anything else. So when we become cold, it's very difficult for them to hit accurately. And at the same time, I am constantly using thrusters to move myself either laterally or vertically. So I'm technically orbiting around the Thargoid, therefore making it impossible for it to hit me as long as I keep my heat signature below the threshold.
Yeah,
Using
threshold
these
is
tactics,
20%.
by using these tactics, we've actually one of our challenges for pilots is to kill an interceptor without taking any damage at all. Don't use any repair limpets. Don't take a single hit, and it is entirely possible, and people have done it. You essentially avoid all hits.
I've done 99% so many times that it's just fucking pissed me off trying to do that. And I'll get one little thing, and then, God damn it, and I'll just stop and go back and rearm, and all right, let's try again, right? And to that point, I've done this. I think my best in a Sidewinder is about 85% hull when I finished it. So that just kind of goes to show you that the thing that I've always enjoyed about the Thargoid combat is there's a lot of strategy and technique to it, a lot more so than just going in and shooting at something with like kind of normal combat. So
it just doesn't work.
Yeah, right. So you got to be a little strategy. One of the things we haven't mentioned that I think we should is let's talk about the way the shields cycle and the fact that you don't necessarily have to take its shields down when the shields come up.
Yeah, the shields decay at a rate of 25 megajoules per second. Of course, the bigger the Thargoid, the more megajoules it'll have in its shield. So you can allow it to decay over time, and that's actually a technique a lot of us use when soloing interceptors. We just allow the shield to decay on its own and then engage it again.
Yeah, so like when I did my, okay, French Novelty, we got some more coming in. Whenever I've done my solos, okay, this is the big daddy. Whenever I've done my solos in the Sidewinder, I take out a heart and then I run, right?
Yeah.
Because, actually, let me bring it up here for a second.
Anybody sees it?
Yeah, it's near the conflict zone center, so
I don't see it. Oh, okay. And so I just run that minute and a half, right?
We good? It's out of range.
Yeah, seems to be all right.
Yeah, I don't see it coming. And so I just run between that because I'm not going to be able to do enough damage to take its shields down. So I just wait till those shields expire. Then I go back in to take out the next heart, right? I'm going to try this time. Why don't we talk quickly, although there's a pretty good swarm to talk on. Let's talk about the swarm and the flat cannon. Gluttony, why don't you... I'm going to use that right now, so why don't you tell everybody about how that works?
So the flat cannon is basically a remote detonating round that kind of sends shrapnel everywhere when you release it. So the firing mechanic is actually very innovative when it comes to weapon design in this game. So when you fire it by holding down the fire button, and as long as you hold it down, it will continue to travel in a straight line. And the moment you release the trigger is when it detonates. And there is a unique HUD that shows you when to detonate it. It has a triangle that builds up as it gets closer to the target. And this is a weapon that is pretty much exclusively effective against the swarm, and the only weapon that is effective against the swarm. And the swarm sometimes likes to travel in very unique patterns that make it very difficult for a straight firing weapon like the flag to hit, and that is why you need to make predictive shooting based on the aiming reticle that is provided for you.
Xygius getting plastered by swarm.
Well, yeah, and
Somebody please take the Hydra.
I'm trying to specifically
please
show the show that. So again,
somebody
you guys
please
will
take
see
aggro from the Hydra.
this little
I'll put
round
it.
triangle icon. I'm waiting for that to fill. Let me turn the audio on for a second.
Yes.
Up down. So I've just exerted the Hydra's heart. Hydra 1 doesn't glow very brightly, which makes it quite challenging as well.
Hydra's hearts are backwards. They glow on the back instead of the front.
Yeah, basically, Hydra's hearts are indeed very hard to see, but there's like a red mist effect around the exerted heart, which in Hydra's case is probably the more consistent showcase of what heart is exerted exactly, because instead of one giant glowing orb, it has 3 smaller
Heart down.
glowing spots.
Right. It's hard to
which
see
are
from the front.
harder to see. I do recommend using regard because it makes the like the mist easier to see, at least to me.
Exegius, there's one little tip I want to give you before
Please.
you guys go on. I noticed that the swarm went through your ship, like it enveloped your ship.
Uh-huh.
There's one little tip you should know. The moment a swarm envelops your ship, like if it catches up to you and it kind of goes around you, it'll go into a mode where it'll launch missiles at you. Like it'll basically kamikaze swarm components, Thargons at you, and that can be very lethal.
Okay.
So
Yep.
if you see a swarm coming at you, try to boost away so that it doesn't envelop your ship.
Yeah,
And
it is entirely possible to keep the swarm in that docile state for the whole fight and not
Yes.
kill it, and it won't suicide into you. I prefer like basically ramming the swarm because I'm in a slow Corvette, so it's basically the only way. But if you're in a medium ship, it is entirely possible to just keep the swarm at bay.
And I'm out of ammo for it, so I think I'm sure I've got synth. Yeah.
So in a Hydra fight like this, without using premium ammo, you pretty much have to drop back to the station a few times to restock because they just take so much damage.
Yeah.
And especially with swarms as well.
Okay,
Missiles.
Quickly, I'm going to brag on Malingo here, which is
Maligno.
I keep saying it wrong.
Maligno.
He, I believe, is the only person to solo 2 Hydras together, or back to back. It took 4 hours. And Malingo, I keep doing it wrong. Maligno, do you still have do you have the stats that you posted in our Discord? All the different synths you did? Please share.
Yes.
Please share.
Right. So basically, that fight is a fight of endurance. These creatures are incredibly powerful, and if you use premium ammo alone, you could probably kill both creatures. But the problem is that you may just run out of ammo before you finish the second one. And so what I decided to do, my strategy was to use standard ammo reloads for my Gauss cannons, which the boosting damage is only 15%, but it's still good enough to get the job done. So basically, over the course of 4 hours, I used 36 standard ammo reloads out of a maximum of 40. So it kind of gives you an idea of how hard it was. And used a whole bunch of heatsink reloads, flak reloads.
Hold on. Not a whole bunch. Tell them how many if you remember. It was like
92.
92. Yeah, yeah. Please tell.
Yeah, 92. So I'll go through the list. So
Yes.
0 premium reload. So I'm pretty proud of that. It's kind of the thing. No
Yes.
premium reload.
Absolutely.
36 standard ammo reloads, 3 basic ammo reloads, 92 heatsink reloads, 22 flak reloads. Which, by the way, when I started using a lot of flak, I just said, okay, I'm not gonna kill the swarm anymore. I'm just gonna avoid the swarm and just try to kill the interceptors without it, because I was using a lot of nickel and iron, which is required for limpets. So I was starting to eat into my resources a little too fast. I used 18 limpet reloads to repair my ship and 5 AFMU reloads to repair internal modules. So it's basically a fight of endurance. I actually found this surprisingly hard. I have soloed other things before, like a Hydra and two Medusae, as you know. I thought it was going to be easier than that, but it was actually way harder.
Oh man.
Like,
I mean, I've joked with people once you posted that. I don't know that I would want to have sex for 4 hours straight, let alone
well,
play a damn video game, right?
my retort to that is, it just feels that good, man.
Well,
when you
know,
kill
hey,
two beasts.
Yeah, I will give you that, right? The satisfaction at the end of that is pretty damn epic. And if I'm right, in fact, Malingo, if God, I keep doing it, Malingo, if you can give me, DM me a link to that video, if you don't mind, and I'll post that
Sure.
and share that for everybody.
Sure. I could post it as well in the chat.
The YouTube chat will block it, so I want to make sure I get it on YouTube and
Oh,
Twitch.
okay. Sure. Okay, I see. Let me go ahead and deem that to you. Just a moment.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
This actually, I guess, if I'm allowed to complain for a bit, brings us well to the problem of balance. Because as you've noticed, basically doing that sort of achievement, well, it's obviously not normal, to say the least.
To say the
The
least.
game doesn't expect many people to do that kind of thing. But even soloing the normal Hydra, it still takes quite a bit of synthesis, especially when it comes to heat sinks, because current meta for the IX combat completely relies on Gauss, and Gauss is incredibly hot. Obviously because there's no engineering, and there shouldn't be, but that's another point.
One quick thing, may I interject? So
Yeah.
I sent you the link, but the thing told me the Discord server can allow me to send you a personal link.
Sorry,
so
put it in voice chat.
DM.
Just put it in voice chat now.
Oh, voice chat. I see.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
we have to. I have my account friend where we have to be friended. There it is.
Oh, okay.
We'll fix that later.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so I put it in voice chat. So go ahead, Rob.
Just shared it. So
Yeah,
if you guys
so,
want to see something impressive, go watch that video.
Gauss cannons are definitely the best IX weapon we currently have, and
By
that's
far.
not that they are unbalanced. It's because everything else is complete garbage in terms of viability against bigger Thargoids, especially. Just a very, very fast background on how the damage works. Like, if you don't know, you can probably read up details on the wiki, but when you deal damage to a ship, your weapon armor penetration and the target's armor rating come into effect.
I got a scan. Oh boy.
Oh, you did?
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah. Basically, and it means that if your armor penetration is higher than the target armor rating, it basically doesn't matter. You'll deal 100% damage. But if it's lower, then you divide one by another and deal much less damage. For example, Cyto Scramblers, the power play lasers that deal massive shield damage, they have one armor penetration.
Right.
Which means that if you are attacking a Corvette's hull, for example, with an armor rating of 70, you deal 1/70th of damage. Because one is divided by another. That is why that weapon specifically stated to be ineffective against hull. This comes into effect very, very hard in IX fights, because IX weapons have a very different amount of armor penetration, and Thargoids have very different amount of armor ratings as well.
Exigeous, pop a heatsink if you want to live.
Yeah.
And boost.
Yeah,
And
I'm
going
going to go ahead and
for
jump
this
out.
one.
So
I
I
got
can
the I got
come
a
back.
swarm's aggro. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
trying to kill you.
Sorry, I
Oh,
just
no
saw
worries.
you getting
Yeah.
fired upon.
No worries. I'm going to just go ahead and jump out. It says I'm at 28%. I'll be right back.
Yeah, go and repair
Yeah,
again.
go repair.
So the problem is again the lowest possible IR on the interceptors is 100. That's the Cyclops, and then they scale somewhat unevenly up to the Hydra's 230.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's,
Okay.
as you have may noticed, is much higher than any sort of human ships AR values we have, because the highest currently is 75 on a Type 10. So 230, that's some AR. But by themselves, it doesn't mean much unless you consider then the highest AP on any anti-Thargoid weapon is 140 on Gauss cannons. All of the other weapons have considerably less AP. For example, the second highest is plasma chargers at I think it's 95 or something like that. Basically, considerably less.
Swarm is
And
back up.
yep, I'm on it. And like things like shard cannons, for example, have like 30 AP and some variants. Especially again, it scales down with size. So the problem is that against Cyclops, all of the weapons and all of the weapon types and sizes are relatively balanced because of its relatively low armor rating. But the higher you go, the less effective anything but Gauss basically becomes. Like you can conceivably and relatively okay kill Cyclops with even IX multi-cannons, which have like 32 or 33 armor penetration. But we have a separate challenge rank for people to kill a Basilisk with only old AX weapons.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
that difficult.
Yeah.
And
Let
it is
me
basically, yeah,
well,
it
I
is
guess-
impossible to kill a Medusa with normal AX weapons.
Yeah.
You just don't have enough DPS.
let me point out something real quick to make sure for the new guys that might not know this because we haven't mentioned this yet, which is you also are limited. I think this limit is retarded, by the way, at this point. You're limited to 4 AX weapons. So you can have 2 Gauss
Yes.
and 2 AX multi-cannons, or 4 Gauss or 4X multi-cannons. Fortunately, the flak launcher doesn't factor into that. But the guys that are running like a vet in something, right? You're gonna it's if you're gonna run something on the huges, like imagine you're running huge thermal vent beams. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
I'm running 4 Gauss, 2 medium
Okay.
Gauss on a huge mount and 2 small Gauss on a small mount,
Okay.
because those have a very good convergence.
Yeah. Sure.
And I'm able to kill and snipe hearts
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that.
Fair enough. And as
Rob, you might want to go resupply.
Yep, I'm out of ammo anyway.
yeah.
I'm out of ammo too. I'm just waiting for Mgram to get back.
Yep.
And
Okay,
I'm
here.
on my way back right now too. If you guys have beacons on.
Engram is here. Yep, let me have my beacon on.
My beacon's
My
on. I'm
beacon's
taking
on.
aggro.
We've
Roger that,
been,
taking-
I've been, and thankfully, like Maligno helped me a lot in that regard. We've been trying to figure out what's the numbers behind the stats and the weapons, and to figure out how we can help Frontier rebalance the whole thing to make it so we can actually use more than one weapon against basically anything but the starter interceptors.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a monumental endeavor. Hopefully, once the new patch drops, we'll be able to dedicate more time to it, because unfortunately, with all the broken stuff, our priorities were kind of different in that regard. So yeah, that's the main problem. When I've seen lots of new people complain that, yeah, like, why Gauss? Why do I have to go to the Guardian sites and unlock it? If can't I just use normal IX weapons? Like, yeah, sure. Against Cyclops, you can. You will be at a massive disadvantage, but you can. Against Basilisks, there's like 6 pilots on the whole galaxy that can do that, at least on record.
With standard
If you think
AX.
you
Yeah.
yeah, without any Gauss equipment. If you think you're that good, sure. But so far, practice dictates that not many are up to the task. If you're going against Medusa or anything higher, then it's just a requirement. There's literally zero possibility without cheating or something like that for you to be able to deal enough damage. We've run the numbers. It is almost mathematically impossible and humanly impossible to maintain that amount of DPS. And that's another issue, though, because like it's obvious that Gauss cannon was not intended as a main source of damage for the Thargoid hole. It was definitely intended as a like hard sniping weapon, which at which task it does exceedingly well. But all of the other weapons are supposed to be doing hole damage, which, again, ironically, they're not that great at for various
Okay.
reasons, which I am probably not gonna go into many details now.
Rob, when you come
So
back, we need to make a serious push or it's going to get enraged.
yes, I'm
Heart's at 3%.
Yeah,
We
I'm
just need
trying
to
to get
get
that.
it.
I'm trying to get that last one.
So this is unfortunate, and again, obviously, a Gauss cannon was not intended to be a mainstay weapon, which is why it has such a low ammo capacity, basically copied from the railgun.
Right.
Even lower, actually, it's like 81 instead of 101 rounds. And I've run the numbers, and literally all of the other IX weapons have more like effective damage per reload and per clip. So they are like, if it was possible to run any other AX weapons, we would not run out of ammo so quickly in the fights, but we
Right.
can't, because unfortunately, if we do, we are just not gonna kill anything.
So as
And-
you can see, Exegius, I mean, you would be much better off having 2 fire groups with Gauss cannons and just dropping the plasma chargers.
Sure. And I don't usually go. And by the way, just quickly, I saw a couple comments in chat that Discord was quite a bit louder than I am. If I did just turn myself up and Discord down a bit, so if you guys can confirm for me on stream that's better. And let me be clear. So this is honestly the first time I've ever fought a Hydra with people, like more than just jumping in and checking one out. Usually with the friends that I bring to do this are brand new at it, and I'll do a Cyclops or a Basilisk, and I just really enjoy the plasma chargers, right? I just find them fun. But you're absolutely right.
It's a beautiful weapon.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like the day that weapon gets better balanced, we're
Right.
gonna be all over it because it's beautiful and it's nice. But
Yes. But they're totally
Yeah,
right.
at
It is not.
yeah,
it
at
is
some
not
point you just have
effective.
to decide between having a nice weapon and actually being able to kill anything.
Absolutely, right. So yeah, to clarify, that's why I have them on this build, right? And for something like a Cyclops or Basilisk, they work fine, right? But yeah, they're totally
Yeah.
right. The Gauss, and also to the point you guys are making, I hate getting stuck with just one weapon and firing that one weapon all the time, and so that's the only reason I'm running them, right?
I just had the Hydra teleport considerable
It's
distance.
right
so
next to me all of a sudden. Yeah.
May heavy be in it's either
Just comes out
desync.
that it's,
Yeah, it's
That's
desync
alright. We got the heart, so
synchronizing.
we're just
Might check if the hearts are still dead, because
They
we
are.
had several instances.
There's 3 hearts down and 5 left.
Yep.
Thankfully.
by the way, go ahead.
I think it might have been a split instance or something there. No, that's all right. We're seeing the same one now, I think.
Yeah,
I was gonna
we
say
had instances where the hearts regrew after being like resynchronized, and again,
we call
it
it
just
necro
teleported again. I'm on the swarm. If anybody can confirm that.
I just got Palpatined.
Yeah, the Hydra Lightning is especially dangerous because the damage it does scales with the variant, and basically I think it deals almost 4,000 to 5,000 damage on the Hydra raw shield damage.
4,400. Yeah.
4,400. Yeah.
And I
It
just lost
basically
my life
deletes
support.
shields.
I just lost my life
and
support,
it's
guys. So
thermal, right?
I'm gonna have to head back in
Uh,
a second.
Yeah, you
just
might
let
have
me-
just it may just malfunction
Whoa,
because
I'm almost dead.
Alright, I've got it, Exegius. You
Yep.
can go now.
I'm gonna see if I can get out of here. Let me point
By
out
the
to guys,
way-
we've talked about this in other streams about low weight versus high weight. You'll notice that these guys are going to mass lock the shit out of you. So if you're in a really tight situation and need to get out as fast as you can, having a remote system ready or quickly grabbing a remote system and high waking to it might be the way you're going to have to go. Fortunately, since I've got the other guys here to help aggro it for me. Oh god damn it! I left my nav lock on. Fuck. drop it back in. I do that all the damn time.
Yeah, Navlok is quite broken, although it should be fixed in the next patch a bit.
Yeah, you say that. I'll believe it when I see it.
Oh,
Well,
Yeah.
me too, but
For those that
that's
don't
at
know,
least gives us some
we've been
hope.
mentioning the next patch. The patch notes are out. Iron, if you happen to see them. And by the way, just a quick thank you to Iron Fist for helping me moderate chat today. I really appreciate it, buddy. You're doing a great job. If you could find maybe the patch notes and post them in for everybody, the update's going to go live next Tuesday. So just for those that know.
but yes,
Newsfama.
as much as we like to bash Frontier and say that things are pretty much always broken some way or another, that bugs are bugged, which insects are
right.
bugs. But
Ba-dum-tsh.
anyway, so but in the end,
Yeah.
we're very happy that Frontier decided to listen to the community and fix a lot of, well, at least attempt to fix a lot of these issues. And we've been coordinating with their community team personally in AXI, and we know that they are trying to get these things fixed. So we're very happy to hear that a lot of these things are supposedly fixed. And of course, we'll believe it when we see it.
Right,
But we're still
right.
very happy that they listened to the community.
Swarm going back or for Engram? Not sure.
I deleted one of them, so there's another swarm out, and I'm just pulling him back to the center of the AXCZ. So we might actually even get some NPCs.
And so, guys, because I'm guessing with the time that I kind of want to go, I don't see us killing this thing in the next 15 or 20 minutes. Would you guys agree with that?
We can. We just need
Uh,
everybody in here.
Yeah,
Just need to
it's
focus, basically.
Okay. So let's do this. Why
We
don't
can
we spend the
definitely clear it.
next couple minutes, Gluttony? Why don't you? Let's end the conversation here with Gluttony. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about AXI, how people would join, how they get involved, that kind of thing, and then for the last 10 minutes or so, I'm going to turn up the game audio a bit, and we'll just talk a little less and let the game speak for itself some, and then I'm going to go ahead and call it. So we'll be done here in about 15 minutes or so, guys. So if you've got questions in chat that I've missed, Iron, let me know. We've been talking pretty nonstop, so it's been hard to get stuff in. But if there's questions that we haven't missed yet, let us know. Otherwise, Gluttony, tell us a little about AXI, and then we'll just enjoy trying to kill this guy.
Sure. As I've mentioned earlier, and for those of you that maybe just tuned in or didn't hear me earlier, the Anti-Xeno initiative is a academic platform and also a coordination platform. We are very welcome to new players and pilots. We're more than excited to teach more people to become acquainted with the Anti-Xeno combat. And we have mentors dedicated to helping new players to get familiar with the combat itself. And we're always happy to have people grow and become veterans one day. So yeah, I believe I gave you the link for the Anti-Xeno initiatives Discord.
I've been pasting it in. Yep, I've been pasting it in.
We primarily operate from the Discord, and we do have an in-game squadron as well. But we do require you to get onto Discord and learn a little bit about our guidance and whatnot.
Yeah,
And
we
then,
only
yeah,
we only
more than happy.
since there's a limit to number of people present in the in-game squadron at the same time, and we are slowly but surely brushing up against it. We initially decided to only accept people who have at least soloed a Cyclops. So if you want to join us in our in-game squadron, you are required to submit the evidence for we have requirements for that and so on. Everything
But
is
if
in
you
the
just
Discord.
want to join the Anti-Xeno initiative as in becoming a part of the family, becoming a part of the initiative, you can just hop onto our Discord.
Yeah,
There's
Discord
no
is open for
requirements
everybody.
Yeah, and the same.
We actually have
learn a lot.
representatives. We have representatives from practically every squadron out there I can think of. People who join us for the Discord and the chat. So
Sure.
pretty much all of our Discord is open to everyone. It's more or less just a public resource for everyone to use and get information on.
Yep.
So we really encourage anyone interested in AX, just jump on and feel free to ask whatever you want. We'll be happy to help you out.
And the same is true. I've been pasted in the level 11 Discord. We're not specific to any type of gameplay, really. It's really kind of focused around a lot of the content that I put out. So if you guys are looking for a place to, to hang out or ask, gameplay questions of any kind, you're also very welcome to join the level 11 Discord. We have a player squadron and do a good bit of BGS stuff, background simulation stuff. So if you're looking for a squadron to join, we welcome that as well. We do require you join our Discord before you send a squadron invite. invite. So if you want to join us and you send a squad invite, we'll have to track you down before we'll accept that. But yeah, is there have there been any questions? Let's see. Oh, somebody a minute ago. Let's see. I'm gonna get your name wrong. Zachary maybe said, "Tell Gluttony I love him." So you got a fan out there, Gluttony.
More than
And
happy.
yeah,
Sure.
if there are other questions, toss them out real quick. Is there anything that you guys can think about that we haven't really discussed yet? We've kind of packed this full, so I
Oh,
can't.
there's one
So
thing I
I
forgot
think
to mention, real quick. You know how the Interceptor launches caustic missiles?
Uh-huh.
If you run cold and you're farther away from the Thargoid, you can avoid getting hit. Like, it will not target you, and that's actually great in these kinds of fights. So if you can run cold with a thermal beam, or with heatsink, or with silent running, you can avoid caustic missiles altogether.
Yeah, there's a handful of really good tactics that we know that we share to our pilots that give you like excessive advantage in these fights. Things like you can skip the
Oh,
caustic
Mgram.
missiles and the EMP
Amgram,
entirely.
what happened
Yeah.
there?
Oh no, I detonated myself. I wanted a quick trip back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of really powerful tactics, and once like we get a lot of new starters in the AXI, we try to push them along the path to getting their first kill. And once people start to get those first kills done, we really push like all these different tactics that can really help out. There's like a lot of special things you can do with medium ships, a lot of special tactics you can do with large ships that can get you things done quicker as well. And so we've actually built this thing we call it the Anti-Xeno knowledge base. Originally, all of our stuff was just pasted all over our Discord, and it was quite hard to find anything. So I spent a few weeks pretty much compiling it all into one great big website, and I'll post the link in just a moment. And it's pretty much everything over the past few years that we've ever known about Thargoids, all of our tactics, all of our mechanics, all the systems and how they work, and all of our ship builds as well.
Hard out.
All of our guides are in this one big website, and it has practically everything we know in it.
Great.
You don't need to be on the Discord to use the website. It's just there for everyone. It's a public resource, and we want everyone to be able to use it.
Can you
Hard
link
down.
me that? Can you put that in the voice chat channel in Discord right now, and I'll share that with everybody?
Sure.
But yeah, all of these resources and a lot of other resources as well are all in our Discord, very neatly organized, thanks to the overseers, as you can have mentioned here, Rob and Mgram.
All right, great. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and let me first of all thank you guys so much for joining today. We've had 100.rub, Gluttony Fang, Maligno, I think I got it right that time.
Yep.
Yes.
And M. Graham joining us. You can find them all in the XI Discord. We've talked about a lot. And so I'm going to go ahead here in a second, put the game audio on for a bit, and then I'm going to, so I'm basically say our goodbyes now. We'll play for a little bit. I'll probably play for another 5 or 10 minutes because unfortunately I'm going to have to go here in a minute. And I'll be back on Tuesday night for Tutorial Tuesday. Not sure what we're going to do yet. So if you guys have suggestions, have comments on that kind of stuff, you can always find me in the Level 11 Discord. So feel free to ping me there. Otherwise, thanks everybody for joining today. And, if you've not done this before and you're kind of thinking about it, go do it. I enjoy PvP combat more than anything in the game. This is a very close second for me. It's the most complex NPC combat you're going to get in the game because there's so much strategy involved. It takes so much skill. But getting started with the Cyclops that we've talked about, and again, the tutorial I've got against that is not so daunting that anybody can't get through it, right? So make sure you've got a rebuy or two. Go on out, find somebody, and go fight some of these guys because it really is a ton of fun. And with that,
Yeah,
I'm gonna crank it up, and I'm gonna mute Discord mics and everything, guys. So from here on out, we're just gonna have game sound for the next couple minutes. So here we go.
about you.